Previously on The First City. Bleakwood Forest was a dense tangle of ancient trees straddling the border between the western side of the Havens and the eastern edge of the deep wilds. It was cold that day, with a damp stillness that hinted at incoming snow. But apart from that, there was a strange feeling in the air, a subtle wrongness that sent a chill up Lucia's spine. There, in the distance, the snapping of twigs and the crunch of leaves and other forest detritus being crushed underfoot betrayed the presence of an interloper. "You're a long way from the settlements," she called out while keeping her distance. The man whipped around to face her, his eyes wide with alarm. "I've lost my way," he called back. "Can you help me?" he asked. "You are familiar with this area, are you not? Please, help me leave and get home." "What's your name?" she asked. "Pendry," he gasped out. "Hold on, shh." Far away, but rapidly getting closer, Lucia heard the deep, rumbling roar of something terrifying and unimaginable. "We need to run," she commanded. "Now." Out of a nearby stand of trees burst a gigantic bear, at least 5 times the size of any bear Lucia had ever seen before. Since growing out of childhood, Lucia hadn't given much thought to the possibility of ever encountering an elder beast. Yet here now, inexplicably, was one in the flesh. And Lucia's heart, though resolute, quailed in fear at the sight of the monstrous beast. Alright, hey everybody. Welcome back to Session 2 of The First City, an Ironsworn Actual play. So last time, our main character, Lucia, met a stranger lost in the woods. The two were then attacked by a giant bear, an elder beast straight out of legend. In Ironsworn lore, there are these creatures called elder beasts, and they're basically giant versions of normal animals. So there can be elder beasts that are wolves or bears, moose, I don't know. So our player character, Lucia, in the last session was attacked. Well, I guess she wasn't attacked yet. I mean, she just encountered an elder beast who was a bear, and the bear chased her down. So she and the man she met, whose name is Pendry, ran away, and now we're going to see what happens next. So to briefly recap, our characters are Lucia. She's 19 years old, descended from those who invaded the old world. In our lore, our people came to the Ironlands because they were driven out by invaders of the old world, and Lucia and her family are descended from those invaders, and so she's mistrusted by a lot of Ironlander society, and so she's an outcast. In the previous session, she met Pendry, who is 21 years old, although I guess he didn't really state that. That's just something we as the omniscient narrator know as a fact. Wealthy, dressed in fine clothes, and he is lost in Bleakwood Forest. And he's not an outdoorsman, very not tough, but he seems to be well-meaning. Seems to be a nice guy. Got a good feeling about him. As for Lucia, let's go over her character sheet briefly. She has 3 edge, 2 iron, 2 wits, 1 heart, 1 shadow, so highest in edge, and fittingly enough, she uses a bow and arrow as her main weapon, and then iron and wits are decent, and then heart and shadow are pretty low. She's at full health and full supply. Last session, the appearance of the elder beast was so shocking, so disturbing, that she lost 4 spirit in one go. Oh no, why did we do that? So I rolled the Ironsworn move Endure Stress because, seeing a giant bear is stressful. So I did the move, and that wiped out 4 points of spirit. So we have 1 left. Hopefully that turns out okay. Here are her assets. She is an archer, which is her combat talent. So that theoretically could play into this combat if we have a combat in this session. I'm trying to act as if I don't know what's about to happen. But yes, if we were to have a combat in this session, theoretically, her archer combat talent could play into that. Whether it does or not, we shall see. She also has a companion, which is a hound, so she has like a dog best friend. The hound is not with her right now. I just want to make that clear. Hopefully it was clear in the previous session when I didn't mention the dog at all. But basically the dog is at home. She went to the forest to be by herself, and her dog was at home protecting the house. So in case you're wondering why we never mention her hound companion, the hound companion is not currently with her. So we're kind of playing with a little bit of a disadvantage because instead of having all of her assets with her, she only has 2. But that's just for this initial inciting incident scene. I'm sure the dog will come back later, and it'll be very cute and very fun. Her main vow is to found the first city of the Ironlands. You don't have to remember that because it's not going to come into play anytime soon. It's an epic vow, so it's very much a long-term goal. We're not making progress today, don't worry. All right, all that being said, let us begin. So as a reminder, what I do with these videos, of which there have been there have been one so far. So in the grand tradition of these many one video, I'm going to narrate the story that I've written out, and I will also show you the dice rolls that I did, and I will interrupt the story to explain the dice rolls and to talk a little bit about what I was thinking as I made each move and how I interpreted each move. So yeah, hopefully that'll be fun. You get the best of both worlds, an half audiobook, half game. Like peanut butter and jelly. All right, here we go. I like to do like a little epigraph, a little kind of prologue for each session, just to set the mood, set the scene, kind of ground us in the world. And so here's the little intro. 84 years after the fall. Mother, why are you always kind to the people from the towns when they are so often cruel to us? Lucia asked. Lucia, sometimes the bravest thing you can do is show decency in a world that all too often lacks it, her mother replied. Well, that isn't how I want to live. Why should I help those who would hardly do the same for me? Because, my dear, you're a good person, and that is what good people do. All right, here we go. So a reminder, what I'm doing here, I keep my game pretty Oracle light. I'm not going to do a bunch of yes-no Oracle rolls throughout the game. What I do instead is I just do one main Oracle roll at the beginning of the session. I use the action and theme Oracle tables, and I combine them into a phrase, and I'm going to try to incorporate that phrase somehow, even tangentially, into the story. It's not going to be a huge factor in the story. It can be pretty hard to shoehorn this random phrase into a coherent story, but we'll try our best. We'll see how it goes. And the action and theme for today is change and faction. So change faction. Quick note about this before we start. Change faction is actually an awesome Oracle phrase, I think. It's pretty evocative, like the idea of changing factions. That brings to mind themes of betrayal, mostly betrayal. That's the main theme. But betrayal is a big one. That can be real good fodder for an interesting story. And so this would have been perfect for later on in the story. But honestly, right now we're in session 2. We've only met 2 characters. We haven't gone anywhere else. And so there's not really any factions to change yet, unfortunately. So I feel like we got the right prompt at the wrong time. I think this could have been really cool later on, but right now there's just not really much I can do with it, I think. I do try to do something with it, and you'll see later what I tried to do with this Oracle prompt. 93 years after the fall. Lucia stood shell-shocked at the sight of the monstrous bear. Brutish face contorted with rage and bearing knife-like teeth inside a massive skull, the colossal elder beast let out a deep, booming roar that shook Lucia to her bones. And here's our elder beast. I love these little graphics that I made for the foes. I love video games. I love RPGs, RPG video games. And so I love a good health bar. I love a good health bar, and this gave me an opportunity to make a nice health bar. This is the Elder Beast, Elder Bear. He's a foe, extreme rank, so quite dangerous. Well, not literally dangerous, because dangerous is a different rank. He's quite extreme. In front of her, Perry, not Perry. This isn't the modern world. This is a fantasy universe. There's no Perry here. In front of her, Pendry knelt with one hand supporting himself on the ground where he had stumbled. For a brief moment, Lucia considered leaving the unfortunate man behind. She imagined herself turning her back and running away as fast as her legs could carry her, which, she was certain, was much faster than this sheltered, ungraceful townsman could possibly go. For a moment, she considered it. After the moment passed, she held out her hand. Get up, she said. Hurry! Pendry grabbed her hand and pulled himself up to standing. Turning to look at the enormous, wrathful bear, the young man's eyes widened and his face paled. Immediately, he dropped Lucia's hand and, without a word, began to flee in the opposite direction. Despite everything else that demanded her attention, Lucia couldn't help but feel a sense of disgust rising in her stomach at this disgraceful and pathetic act, which served only to confirm her suspicions about the selfish nature of these cowards who called themselves Ironlanders. The poor man's instinct for self-preservation was his own undoing, however. Alerted by Pendry's... I keep wanting to call this guy Perry. Why? The poor man's instinct for self-preservation was his own undoing, however. Alerted by Pendry's sudden movement, the bear turned its head, uttered a short, sharp roar, and started to charge after him. Again, Lucia considered saving herself. Every impulse in her body told her to run while the elder beast was distracted. But something inside, Some deeply held conviction instilled in her when she was a child and enduring even now as the last remnants of her childhood were fading away, refused to allow her to give into selfishness or fear. And so, she stood firm. Gathering up every ounce of her courage, she yelled after the charging bear. "Hey, over here!" Alright, so to recap what's going on here, Pendry and Lucia were running away from the bear, and Pendry stumbled, and so the bear caught up to them. And so now the bear is here, the bear is scary. And this is actually where I tried to incorporate the Oracle action plus theme that I mentioned earlier, the change faction phrase. Here is where I tried to kind of shoehorn that prompt into the story. Poor Pendry. So what Pendry did in this scene was he saw the Elder Beast and he got super scared, and so he ran away without worrying about Lucia at all. And she just helped him too. So a pretty cowardly and selfish act, you could say. You could almost say he changed faction. Oh my gosh, that's terrible. But yes, in a way, he changed faction. That's what I'm trying to get at. So basically, the two are helping each other, they're on each other's side, but because Pendry became afraid, he was thinking only of himself and he ran away. So that's how I tried to incorporate the change faction phrase into the story. And I do feel a little bit bad because I like Pendry. I'm not trying to throw this character under the bus. I'm not trying to make him seem like a bad dude. He just got scared. He got scared, and so he did kind of a crappy thing, but it's understandable. I actually like this character, and I think he'll have a nice redemption arc in the long term. Unless he dies, which is also possible. Anything could happen. So I did have a little bit of a hard time figuring out what Lucia should say in this moment. There's this build-up where it's like, oh, Pendry's in trouble, and the bear is charging after him, and then Lucia is behind, and she wants to get the bear's attention and distract the bear so that he doesn't attack Pendry. So it's just kind of this epic moment where it builds up to this heroic moment. And I was like, well, what is she gonna say? And basically she says, hey, over here. Which, hey, that's not the worst thing you could say. Also not the most, like, I probably wouldn't put it on a poster, but, I mean, what else? What else would you say in that situation? There's nothing else to say. Hey, bear. Really, the message she's trying to convey is, hey, bear, get over here. So, hey, over here. That about sums it up. So she shouts at the bear to get its attention and to get it away from Pendry. And so what does that mean? We are going to do a dice roll, a move. So the move we're making is enter the fray. We are entering into combat, facing off against our foe. There are different ways you can enter the fray, and depending on how you do it, that determines the stat you use. It could have used shadow or wits or something if we had entered the fray in a different fashion. But in this case, we are being very bold, and we're entering combat facing off against our enemy. And so that means we're going to use the heart stat. Our action score is 4 plus 1 heart equals 5. Our challenge dice are 4 and 9. The 5 beats the 4, but not the 9. So the 5 beats one of the dice. That's a weak hit. And the result of that is Lucia takes initiative. And so we are starting a combat. If you are not familiar with Ironsworn or how combat works, there's this thing called initiative that determines whose turn it is, essentially. If we have initiative, then we can make whatever move we want. If the foe has initiative, then we have to react to whatever the foe does. Lucia takes initiative, so it's our turn to do whatever. Diverted by Lucia's shouting, the bear stopped and wheeled around to face her. It let out another angry roar and began to charge. As she faced the monster head-on, Lucia's heart shuddered at the speed at which the massive creature was thundering towards her. Glancing beyond the approaching beast, Lucia saw that Pendry had fallen yet again. The man was desperately scooting backward with his arms and legs as he sat on the ground facing Lucia and the bear. Eyes wide and mouth agape, he looked all but paralyzed with fear. There was no help coming from that quarter. But no matter. Lucia was ready. Kinzura was a forest older than memory, and for centuries nature had held free rein within its boundaries. In ancient days, it had been host to several rivers, swift-flowing bodies that had long since dried up, but left in their wake steep-walled ravines carved deep into the earth by unyielding waters. There was one such ravine near her now. In her peripheral vision, Lucia could see the lip of a wide chasm, its near edge lined with saplings and ferns. With enough strength and speed, Lucia was almost certain she could jump across. In deciding between certain death at the teeth and claws of an enormous bear and potential death from a fall down a deep ravine, Lucia's options were far from ideal, but the choice was clear. Mustering all of her energy, Lucia ran toward the edge of the chasm and leapt. All right, we are facing danger. We are attempting something risky with agility because she's jumping. That means we use our edge stat. So our action score is 4 plus 3 edge equals 7. Challenge dice are 6 and 7, so that is a weak hit. Remember, ties don't count, so the 7 beats the 6, but not the 7. So weak hit, and the result of that is we lose 1 momentum, and Lucia loses initiative. So that's how combat works in Ironsworn. If you have initiative and you make a move, if you get a strong hit, you keep initiative, you retain initiative. If you don't get a strong hit, you lose initiative, so then it's your enemy's turn. So Lucia has lost initiative, so now it is the bear's turn, so we'll see what happens now. With a heavy thud, Lucia landed on the opposite side of the ravine, her momentum bringing her forward onto her hands and knees. Behind her, the bear reached the edge of the chasm and stopped at the spot where Lucia had jumped from. Lucia froze as the creature stared down at her, letting out several long, guttural breaths. If Lucia could make the jump, the massive bear likely could too. But whether due to trepidation, indolence, or mere capriciousness, the elder beast chose not to follow her. With a frustrated growl, the bear turned away from Lucia and toward easier prey. In the distance, Pendry still sat on the ground, frozen in fear. Starting slowly but soon breaking out into a full sprint, the bear ran at the vulnerable man. Seeing that Pendry was in no position to save himself, Lucia rushed to her feet and snatched her bow from off her back. Hurriedly knocking an arrow, Lucia lifted the bow and pointed it at the charging beast. She tried to breathe calmly, but her bow hand trembled. There was no time to carefully aim. The bear had almost reached its prey. With determination and desperation, Lucia let her arrow fly. So here's the next move. We're using a move called Turn the Tide. Turn the Tide is interesting. It's a combat move where you can take initiative away from your enemy. So if your foe has initiative, you can take initiative to make a move. So the bear has initiative, and so the bear is going after Pendry. That's the bear's move. And so I'm using Turn the Tide to take initiative so I can make a move before the bear attacks Pendry. So we're kind of combining two things, the Turn the Tide move, and then we're going to do the strike move. So we're risking it all to attack at range. Because our strike is a ranged strike, we're going to use our edge stat. So our action score is 2 plus 3 edge plus 1 extra bonus because of Turn the Tide. So 2 plus 3 plus 1 equals 6. And we get a weak hit versus a 2 and a 7. The result of our weak hit is we get +1 momentum, we inflict 2 harm on the bear, and then Lucia loses initiative. Because remember, we only retain initiative if we have a strong hit. So we lose initiative, but we inflict 2 harm on the bear. Now, what does that mean? So harm is kind of the unit of measurement for damage in a combat encounter. The amount of damage the harm actually deals is based on the enemy's rank. So in this case, our foe, Elder Bear, is extreme rank. And so each harm equals 2 ticks. So ticks is what Ironsworn calls it. Hopefully it's not too confusing because I'm kind of making it a health bar, an HP bar, and it goes down. If you're playing Ironsworn by the book, it's not a health bar, it's a progress track that counts upward. So you would get 2 ticks of progress per harm for an extreme foe. I hope that's not too confusing. Honestly, I don't think you need to worry about it. If you're watching along, I think it's going to be intuitive, especially if you look at the graphics. It's kind of clear, like, oh, we damaged the bear. Despite the challenging circumstances, Lucia's arrow flew true and lodged itself deep in the bulk of the bear's left shoulder. Ow. Oh no. Poor bear. Man, I felt a little bit bad for the bear in this session. The bear is okay, and no actual fantastical bears were harmed in the making of this session, but yeah, I felt kind of bad. I'm not the biggest animal advocate. I'm not a member of PETA or anything, but I like animals, and so I felt bad that I felt bad that a bear was the enemy, because I think in general, most animals are pretty chill as long as you don't bother them. But this is a fantasy story, and the bear did attack first, so it is what it is. It's all fiction. It's okay. In real life, be kind to animals. Roaring more in shock than actual pain, the bear veered toward the side of its injured shoulder and rushed past Pendry entirely. "Pendry, get up!" Lucia yelled from across the chasm. The man was still sitting helplessly on the ground. A fair distance behind him, the giant bear had stopped running and turned back around to face its victim. The beast uttered a deafening cry of rage that startled Pendry out of his stupor. Shakily standing up, the young man looked at Lucia, panic and fear apparent on his pleading face. Lucia motioned with her arms for him to come toward her. "Run!" she screamed. Pendry ran. He bolted toward the ravine that Lucia had leapt across, and behind him, the elder beast swiftly followed. Easily surpassing the man's running speed, the bear was soon at Pendry's heels. Knocking another arrow, Lucia raised her bow and hastily aimed it at the pursuing creature. All right, so we're doing another strike, and this time it's just a normal strike, no turn the tide move to complicate things. So strike, it's just an attack. Depending on how you attack, that's what determines the stat you use. If we were attacking at close range, I believe it would be the iron stat that we use. In this case, we're attacking at range with our bow and arrow, and so we are going to use edge. So our action score is 3 plus 3 edge equals 6, and that results in a weak hit. It beats the 5, but not the 8. The result of the strike is we inflict 2 more harm, and Lucia loses initiative because it was a weak hit. Again, Lucia's arrow flew true. It hit the bear's other shoulder, eliciting a cry of pain from the fearsome beast. Elder Bear takes 2 more harm, and because he's in extreme rank, that's 2 ticks per harm, so 4 ticks. Lifting up a massive paw, the bear swiped at Pendry, but missed as the man ducked down and continued running desperately forward. Disoriented by the strike from Lucia's arrow, the bear slowed slightly, allowing Pendry to stay a few steps ahead. As Pendry and the bear neared the edge of the ravine, Lucia lifted her bow for one more shot at the elder beast. And here's another strike. So we've done basically 3 strikes in a row, but this time our action score is 3 plus 3 edge equals 6, and unfortunately our challenge dice are 7 and 8, so the 6 beats neither of those, which means we have a miss. Oh no. The result of this is we pay the price, and of course Lucia loses initiative. So pay the price, something bad has to happen. It could be mechanical, so we could lose health or something. But in this case, Lucia is attacking at range, so she's not really the one who's in danger. So rather than a mechanical cost, it's gonna more be a narrative cost, because it's Pendry who's in danger right now, not Lucia. This time, Lucia's luck abandoned her. The arrow whiffed past the elder beast's head as the creature lunged forward to take another swipe at the man racing just ahead of it. Pendry screamed as the bear's claws raked across his back. He staggered, but by some miracle he managed to keep moving. As he ran, Lucia glimpsed rivulets of blood streaming down from his back and dripping onto the forest floor behind him. Behind Pendry, the elder beast had stopped, perhaps satisfied that its prey would soon be in its grasp. Shifting her gaze toward the creature, Lucia saw that it was hurt too. Blood trickled from the wounds in its shoulders where the arrows had pierced its flesh. As Pendry reached the opposite side of the ravine, Lucia noted the terror in his eyes, the look of paralyzing indecision on his face as he stared at the vast chasm before him, and debated within himself whether leaping across was a thing he could do. "Pendry," Lucia said, the steadiness in her voice masking a rising sense of panic. "You need to jump." I can't. I'll fall." Behind Pendry, Lucia heard the elder beast emit a brief, guttural grunt. She saw it turn and begin to stalk silently and steadily toward the hesitating man. Though Lucia generally felt little attachment to other people, and in particular this stranger who had thus far acted with nothing in the way of courage or strength, the thought of witnessing an innocent person's death put her heart in her throat. "You won't fall," Lucia tried again to convince him. "You can make it." No response. "I'll help you," she said. "I'm right here. I'll catch you. I won't let you fall." Still silence. The bear was stalking closer and closer. "Pendry!" Lucia shouted with all the conviction she could call forth. "Jump or die!" All right, and then finally we have a different move. So this is Compel. When we compel, we're attempting to convince someone to do something. In this case, because we're trying to convince someone, we're going to use the heart stat. So 6 plus 1 heart equals 7. And luckily enough, our challenge dice are pretty low, just a 2 and a 4. And so we have a strong hit. And that means that we get +1 momentum, and also Lucia takes initiative. As the two locked eyes, Lucia saw a change come over Pendry's face. A picture of indecision gave way to a look of resignation, which was quickly replaced by an air of determination mixed with immense vulnerability, as he looked at Lucia and placed all his trust in a person he had met less than an hour before. Taking a few steps backward, the man took a deep breath, visibly steeled himself, ran at full speed toward the ravine, and launched himself off the edge. As Pendry's leaping form traced an arc across the wide chasm, Lucia felt her heart drop into her stomach as she realized that he wasn't going to make it. The distance was too far. Pendry's effort hadn't been enough. Dropping her bow and rushing forward to kneel at the edge of the ravine, she reached out her hand to grasp Pendry's as the man came crashing down into empty space. All right, so we are reaching out to save Pendry as he falls, which means we are facing danger. We're attempting something risky with strength, which means we're using the iron stat, so our action score is 4 plus 2 iron equals 6, and we get a weak hit, because that's versus a 2 and a 10. The result is -1 momentum, and Lucia loses initiative, because it's a weak hit. Quick note before we move on. I just want to make it clear that in this story, we are going to go by what I call action movie physics, not realistic physics, where you have to worry about the downward acceleration of gravity and all that other serious stuff. Basically, If something could conceivably happen in a Mission Impossible movie starring Tom Cruise, it's fair game. Lucia felt Pendry's hand lock onto hers, felt the man's weight hanging down past the edge of the chasm, threatening to drag her over and down with it. Gripping the trunk of a small but sturdy tree that was growing nearby, Lucia anchored herself as she pulled her other arm up with all her might. With some effort, she managed to lift Pendry far enough that he was able to grasp the ravine's edge and climb over onto solid ground. Taking a second to catch her breath, Lucia glanced over at Pendry, who was sitting on the ground and seemed too shocked to feel relieved. Their moment of peace was short-lived. Hearing a familiar growl emanating from across the chasm, Lucia looked up to see the elder beast pacing doggedly along the opposite side of the ravine. In that instant, Lucia knew in her heart that the beast was going to attempt to jump across, and she knew that it would succeed. Looking around, Lucia saw nothing but tangled woods surrounding them. Exhausted and overwhelmed, Pendry was in no position to outrun anything. Blood was still dripping from his back where the bear had scratched him. Running away wasn't an option. The only way to go was down. Picking her bow up from the ground where she had dropped it and stowing it away safely on her back, Lucia walked over to where Pendry sat and held out her hand. "We need to go," she said. "Where?" he asked nervously, glancing across the chasm at the approaching beast. "Into the ravine. Its sides are steep, but if we're careful, we might be able to find some handholds and climb down to the bottom." "And if there are no handholds?" he protested with some alarm. "It's our only option. The creature is coming and you're too slow to outrun it," Lucia replied harshly. "The creature can't climb down, but we can. This could be our only chance to get away." Lucia looked over again at the elder beast, then back down at Pendry. "If you refuse to go," she said, "I'm going to have to leave without you." "Please, don't leave me." Lucia's voice softened a little at the man's obvious desperation and fear. "I haven't left you yet, and you're still alive. Will you trust me one more time?" Following Pendry carefully over the edge of the ravine, Lucia glanced back as the two clung tightly to the chasm's sheer walls. The elder beast was on the opposite side of the ravine, looking ready to jump across right on top of them. "Go!" she shouted down to Pendry. "Now!" The two began a hasty descent down the steep, rocky surface, desperately searching out tiny crevices and narrow ledges on which to place their hands and feet. The ravine was about 30 feet deep. A third of the way down, Pendry's hand slipped off a handhold, and it was only Lucia's quick grabbing of his arm that kept him from falling off the rock face entirely. As she held onto Pendry, Lucia could feel her own hand slipping from the shallow handhold she was clinging onto. Alright, so they're climbing down the ravine, trying to escape the elder bear, and now Lucia is slipping, so she's trying to hold on to Pendry and to the rock face, and so she's facing danger using strength. So we are going to do a face danger move, 1 + 2 iron = 3, and unfortunately, versus a 4 and a 5, that is a miss. The result of that is that we pay the price, so something negative happens either mechanically or in the narrative, or both. At a loss for what to do and bone-tired from everything she had gone through so far, Lucia's strength gave out. She felt the wall slip from her grasp, and then she was falling into empty space. She lost hold of Pendry's arm as she fell, and as he fell, he screamed. A ragged, anguished scream that echoed off the surrounding walls and would have seared indelibly into Lucia's mind if she hadn't been so distracted by her own troubles. As she plummeted, she scrabbled frantically at the wall in front of her with her hands and feet, kicking into the rocky, uneven surface and grabbing at scraggly plants growing out of unseen crevices in a desperate attempt to slow down her descent. So, part of the pay the price is we endure harm. They're climbing down the ravine, we had a miss, and so Lucia's going to get hurt. So we're going to do the endure harm move, which you do if your character is facing physical damage. So we are going to roll a 1 + 3 health = 4. And unfortunately, we have another miss. Oh no. Versus an 8 and a 10. So we lost 2 health and 1 momentum. The amount of health you lose is based on the challenge rank of the danger you're facing. You can use your best judgment to decide what the challenge rank of the danger is. And in this case, climbing/falling down a ravine, I decided that that was a dangerous challenge rank. And so that's why Lucia lost 2 health. And so now we're down to 3 health and 5 momentum in total. So that's not good. The slope of the ravine wall decreased as Lucia fell lower and lower until she landed painfully in a pile of loose rocks mixed with thick ferns that barely cushioned her fall. Gazing upward, she saw the monstrous silhouette of the elder beast staring down at her from the top of the chasm. After a moment of tense stillness, the bear let out a resentful snort, turned, and then walked away. Alright, quick note before I move on. Breaking the fourth wall a little bit. Although I guess I've been breaking the fourth wall this whole time. I paused the video because my roommate came in to tell me that apparently I've been mispronouncing the word chasm this whole time. Yeah, it's spelled chasm, but it's pronounced chasm. And I really try not to have too many mistakes in these, but I did a quick Control F, and like the word chasm appears 11 times in this thing, and so I've already said it probably 10 times already, and I don't want to go back and re-record all that stuff. So I'm just gonna leave that there. It'll just be a fun blooper. But yeah, just for your sake, for the sake of the listener, don't make my mistake. If you ever need to say the word chasm, it's pronounced chasm, not chasm, even though. Alright, moving on. Looking down at her hands, Lucia saw that they had been scraped raw by her frantic attempts to save herself as she fell. The near wall of the ravine now featured 2 delicate but prominent trails of blood left by her injured hands. Exhausted and aching, Lucia looked around, searching for a way out of the mess she was in. Once she discovered a path out of this ravine, she'd be able to go home. But first, she had someone she needed to find. She found Pendry lying in a heap next to the ravine wall. Scarcely daring to breathe as she walked up to him, she tried to steel herself for the likely possibility that the man was dead. Kneeling down next to Pendry's motionless form, Lucia gently shifted him so he was lying on his back rather than on his side. As she turned him skyward, she was relieved to see the subtle rise and fall of his abdomen, indicating that he still lived and breathed. With a feeble, pained groan, his eyes opened just enough that he could see Lucia kneeling over him. "Am I alive, or are you dead too?" he whispered weakly. "Seems we're both alive, and after a fall that should have been fatal by all rights." "How?" Lucia looked up to see the boughs of several young trees clustered around the area where Pendry had landed. Most of the thick branches reached vigorously toward the sky, but there were some that were broken. Unlucky limbs that had been snapped violently by Pendry's rapid descent, sacrificing their lives for that of a hapless young man who had found himself lost in the woods on a cold and unfortunate day. "The trees must have broken your fall," she said. "Feels more like the ground broke my fall, if I'm being honest." She couldn't help but smile, just a little. It was a refreshing bit of levity on a day that had been far too frightening and grim. Perhaps this Ironlander had more fight in him than Lucia had previously thought. "Can you help me get home?" Pendry's question interrupted her thoughts. "Please. I may die soon, and I would rather die at home than in some lonely wilderness." As Lucia looked down at him, her heart sank. The man's body was broken and battered. His fine clothes were shredded and torn. The blood from the wounds the bear had raked into his back had soaked into his luxurious black coat. "Where do you hail from?" she asked, keeping her tone even so as to avoid giving anything away. We need a settlement name for Pendry's hometown, so we're going to use the settlement name oracle table in the Ironsworn rulebook. That's a 2-parter, actually, so we roll twice. The first roll gives us the category of a man-made edifice, and within that category, the second roll, which is 57, gives us the name Timberwall. So he's from Timberwall. "Timberwall," he replied. Timberwall was the Ironlander settlement nearest Bleakwood Forest, and nearest Lucia's family's isolated homestead on the scrubland of the Havens. 4 leagues east, Lucia said, more as a statement than as a question. "Yes," Pendry said. "You're badly hurt from your fall. It may not do to move you. I can go there and get help and come back for you." "Please, don't leave me here alone." Gazing into his pleading eyes, Lucia realized she couldn't leave him. She barely knew where they were inside the forest now. Their flight from the elder beast had taken them far off her usual course. If she left him behind, it might become almost impossible to find him again, and in the meantime he would be vulnerable to whatever wild creatures might stumble upon him in the night. "All right," she said at last. "I'll take you home." The forest was quiet as Lucia made preparations for the two to set off. An evening stillness settled in as the sky darkened and the sun began to set. "I'm sorry about what I did earlier," Pendry said suddenly, interrupting the silence. "I left you, and it was dishonorable to do so. I was frightened and thinking only of myself." The unexpected apology took Lucia aback. She thought back to the moment when Pendry had first laid eyes on the gigantic elder beast and, in a terror-stricken panic, let go of her hand and run away without giving her a word or a second look. She had been so angry when it happened, so full of self-righteous indignation at the clear cowardice of these useless Ironlanders. But it had been a long day. After everything that had happened, an inexperienced young man's moment of weakness and fear hardly seemed to matter much now. And unbidden, some words her mother had said to her when she was a child rose up hazily from the depths of her memory. "Lucia, sometimes the bravest thing you can do is show decency in a world that all too often lacks it." "It's all right," she said after a few moments. "It's understandable that you were afraid. I was too. All is forgiven." Pendry was silent for a while. "I'm still afraid now," he eventually said. Lucia didn't know what to say in response. "If I die on the way back," Pendry continued, "will you take my body to Timberwall? Tell my family I love them, and that I'm sorry I couldn't make it home." Lucia remained silent for a while longer. She didn't know the right thing to say in a moment like this. She had little patience for emotional displays, and she had never been much good with people. But she thought back to her childhood, to times when she had felt hopeless or afraid. She had taken comfort in the native traditions and ceremonies of the Ironlands that her parents had taught her and held onto so faithfully. The ancient customs had given her a feeling of stability in what was often a dangerous and unforgiving world. There wasn't much she could do for Pendry now, but perhaps she could give him that. "Are you carrying anything made of iron?" she asked him. "What?" Pendry said. "I don't understand." "Iron," she repeated. "Do you have any trinkets or coins made of iron?" "I lost my bags when the bandits attacked," he said. "Maybe I have something like that in my pockets, but I'm not sure." Lucia knelt down next to where Pendry still lay unmoving on the ground. Working gently and carefully, she rummaged through his coat pockets, turning up nothing in most of them, but eventually finding a small iron pendant in the shape of a dragon. "My mother gave that to me," Pendry said when she showed it to him. "For protection. I guess I should have worn it." He laughed weakly. "It's perfect," Lucia said. All right, we're almost done here, and we are going to end with an iron vow. So we're going to make the move swear an iron vow, which means we are swearing upon iron to complete a quest. So our action score was a 2 + 1 heart equals 3, which is terrible. Our challenge dice are 4 and 9, so that is a miss, unfortunately. Now, I decided when this happened that I could not stand for it. So if you miss on the swear an iron vow move, that means that there's like a complication, and so you need to solve a significant problem before you can continue on your quest, or you can give up on the quest entirely, which that would be kind of awkward if we gave up already. This session has already gone on quite long enough, in my opinion, and so I really didn't want to make it any longer by having us have to overcome some arbitrary obstacle for this quest. So I decided to use the burn momentum mechanic. So that's pretty cool. We can see how that works. Burn momentum, basically you give up all of the momentum you have. So we have 5 points of momentum currently. The momentum kind of becomes your action score. So instead of a 3, now it's a 5 because we have 5 momentum. And that means that instead of a miss, we actually have a weak hit because luckily enough, 5 is enough to beat the 4 challenge dice, which is wonderful. So no big complications. So we can just kind of wrap things up here and move on. The result of our weak hit for the swear an iron vow move is we get +1 momentum. So actually, us burning all that momentum didn't turn out too badly. Okay, so moving on. "Pendry of Timberwall," Lucia said as she held the iron pendant in the palm of her hand. "I, Lucia of the Havens, vow that, one way or another, I will bring you home." All right, and with that, we have a new vow. So our new vow is to bring Pendry home to Timberwall, and the challenge rank for this, I decided, was dangerous. Despite the gravity of the ceremony, Lucia felt no change once she had made the sacred vow. No sudden rush of magical forces around her or influx of energy into her veins. She was still a lost young woman, exhausted and hurt and far from home. "Thank you," Pendry said. "I'm forever in your debt." "I think you're forever in my debt several times over by now," Lucia said teasingly. Pendry smiled. After a few moments in which neither person knew quite what to do next, Pendry broke the silence. "Why are you helping me?" he asked her. "I am grateful, but earlier you put your life at risk to save me when I was a stranger to you and could offer almost nothing in return. That is rare in the Ironlands. Why did you help me?" Lucia thought about this for a moment, but for reasons she couldn't fully articulate, she already knew the answer to his question. "Because," Lucia said as she stood up to prepare to leave. "That's what good people do." All right, we made it, folks. That was a long session. Hope you enjoyed that. Hope all of the action scenes and twists and turns were entertaining. I hope the combat encounter was pretty clear. It didn't really go the way that the average combat session in an Ironsworn game would go, I think, because usually in Ironsworn, combat sessions have like a clear beginning and clear end where like somebody loses and somebody wins. In this case, this was kind of a more nuanced combat situation where we just kind of ran away. And the bear didn't follow us down the ravine, so the bear walked away. So we escaped. The bear is okay. Well, the bear is injured, but the bear will be okay. And maybe we'll see the bear again someday. Who knows? Anything could happen. And coming up next, in Session 3, we'll find out whether Lucia can reach Timberwall in time to pull Pendry back from the brink of death. So yeah, stay tuned. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Maybe subscribe to the Substack if you enjoy reading these. Yeah, see you next time. Dude, please don't scare me. What are you doing? What are you saying?
You said chasm, but it's chasm.
Oh,
Isn't it?
Chasm? Chasm? Oh no! I've never... Now I have to look that up. I think you're right. I've never said that word before. I hope it...
I needed to tell you before you continue.
Well, you... Oh, no, it is chasm. Oh, how many times have I said chasm? I can do like a... Well, it's okay. It's just a casual YouTube video. Thank you for letting me know, but you really scared me.
Sorry. I thought you would have for sure heard me open the door.
I've said it 11 times. I'll just do a little addendum at the end.